This is the first Fang fighter versus TIE Interceptor alternate build, at least as far as I can see. But more importantly, it's what I call the Corsair, a personal transport ship built by Din Djarin and the fleet commander in the aftermath of the Mando Season 3 finale. The two ships I took the most inspiration from to make this alternate build were the Rogue Shadow from The Force Unleashed, and then the newer Fondor Hullcraft from Andor. And just like the Fondor Hullcraft, the Corsair does have two modes that the wings can be put in. Now what you guys see now is what I call flight position, but if we look just underneath the wings, we can flip up these small Technic pieces and move them into attack position. And now they're angled up for a little bit more of a fiercer look. And both these wings are almost exactly the same as the TIE Interceptor wings, with just some modification on the backside to make this connection method work, and then one angled plate up at the front to give it a sharper and edgier look. And the wings in their two attack positions are where the majority of the inspiration from the Fondor Hullcraft. And these wings in their two attack positions are where the majority of the inspiration from the Fondor Hullcraft ends, but if we move into the main body, that's where we see a little bit more of the Rogue Shadow come out. We've got these two larger prongs sticking out up front. They're both the same length, unlike the Rogue Shadow, but they do have a little bit of asymmetry worked in there. On the left side, it looks like they took a little bit of battle damage to expose some of the interior greebling using those grill pieces. Whereas on the right side, everything is still plated up with a little bit of dark gray and then white cutting in here or there. Now the tips of the forks house the main weapons for this ship, with the previous ones being seen on the tips of the wings. It's a neat little blaster build that looks very similar to the original Fang fighter, if not exactly the same. Now we can move back into the main body from these cannons on the tips, and underneath this hood in the middle we just have a few lights on either side. It's a small little build with a tiny bit of greebling with that rail and then that bracket sticking out, but it's really just there to cover up this empty space underneath the hood. And while we're on the underside, we may as well check out the landing gear, which is really just some bricks that extend out all the way to the lowest point on the ship. And these two on the front do use some of these snot pieces, so you could consider them some small concealed blasters on the underside, but the ones in the rear are just standard slope bricks with a 1x2 slapped on the bottom. And now back up top, we'll continue down the body where we see a lot more of this dark gray and white design peeking in and out and going in between each other. And I know these might really bother some people, but I kind of think it helps contribute to the overall edgier look that this ship has going for it. And continuing along the main body, we come across a little bit more asymmetry on either side of the cockpit. On the left side of the cockpit, I'm using that TIE Interceptor hatch piece as a small airlock so any other ships can dock to the Corsair from the outside. And then just behind that, we have a small radar dish for any communications going in and out. And then over on the right side, we just have this small white stripe made up of various tiles with a larger, heavier blaster cannon near the wing connection. And the blaster cannon is a little uniquely mounted, being actually upside down on these rounded 1x1s with the bars sticking out of the top. And we'll take a look at the cockpit and the entire interior space in just a second, but first we need to head around back and look at everything I did on the backside. And on the backside, you can really see how Din Djarin and the fleet commander put this ship together from a Fang fighter and a TIE Interceptor, with the Fang fighter engines being on the left, and then the twin ion engines from the Interceptor being on the right. And the more obvious one of them all being the TIE Interceptor cockpit right in the middle. And you can just barely see him peeking through that windshield, but you can fully fit a minifigure in this rear section. But it can't be the TIE Interceptor pilot. Their helmet's a little bit too big. But inside there's not really much going on, just two of these red translucent cheese slopes to represent some small control panels. And there's nothing for him to actually control on the back side here. There's no sort of rear-facing turret or anything. I did try to work one in, but I just couldn't make it work right, so I decided to omit that. But there is plenty of leftover pieces if you want to add that on for yourself. And now that we finally checked out the engines and the small amount of interior space that's back here, we can turn the ship around and check out the cockpit and the interior space that's up front. And to get inside there, we need to remove this 1x3 with the jumper on top of the cockpit piece. Then we can fold up and we have a little bit of access inside. But this only gives us access to some of it. Now we need to remove this front plate that's only attached by two studs to get access to the rest. And right inside we have Mando in the pilot seat with his fold down control panel, but we'll go ahead and get him out of there so we can get a better look inside. And then just behind the cockpit seat, built into the whole of the ship, we have a small bed using those yellow tan cheese slopes on either side as some pillows. Now I'll admit, it's not exactly the best bed I've made for a ship. The minifigures don't fit in it perfectly, but it works. But after you wake up out of bed, you can go ahead and fold down your control panel to give you access to this middle walkway. And we have a small bit of storage on the right side with a Darksaber mount and then two thermal detonators. And then on the left side, it's rather bare with just a small control panel. And you can't really get a good look at it with any of the removable play features I've built in, but I did pack in a tiny bit more detail up on the nose of the ship. All we need to do is remove this hood piece on the front, and then we can fold up this entire front assembly, and then we get access to a small little stove and a tiny bit of counter space. Now it's not much, but because this is a personal transport ship, I wanted this to have everything somebody would need to survive in space for at least a few days. You've got your bed all the way in the back with a tiny bit of storage on the sides and then your small kitchen area up at the front. And before we lock the ship back up and put everything back on, I actually want to show you guys how to attach these side panels because it's a little cumbersome and not that easy. These side panels only attach on 3 studs on either side on this small little hinged assembly that moves up and down. The way I've been attaching these is moving this hinge plate so it's up and completely flat and level. Then I'll take the larger plate assembly and line it up top on those empty studs, and then I'll slide my finger on the underside and use force from both sides to push them together. So be warned, this might be a little difficult if you have fatter fingers and you can't really get your finger underneath these plates. And with that little tip on the interior space, that pretty much covers it for the entire Corsair. Making this alternate build was incredibly fun, but also incredibly challenging. I think there's a reason there's not many of these online. And while we're on the topic of that, I'm not actually 100% sure that I have the first alternate build for this set ever made, but maybe the first one ever published online. I'm almost 1,000,000,000% sure that at some point between the set releasing and me uploading this video, somebody has torn this set apart in their room and made something new from it, so that would count as the first alternate build. But because I can't find any online, I'm going to go ahead and put that in my title because I can. But let me know what you guys thought of the Corsair in the comments down below, and if you want to build one of these for yourself, I have full PDF building instructions available on my Patreon page. I'm secretly hoping maybe this video will inspire a few of you guys to make your own Fang Fighter versus TIE Interceptor alternate builds, so we can get this set moved into the alternate build shuffle a little bit more in the community. And as always, if you guys have any suggestions for any future alternate builds or mods that you'd like me to do, feel free to drop those in the comments down below as well. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace, fellas.